This one is for the people they counted out. They suffered strike after punch, but never broke. Those who stepped into wars they never sought for and nonetheless came out victorious. You were never simply a name in the throng. You were the aberration, the outlier, the one who refused to break when the pressure was at its highest. They did not expect you to ascend. I didn't believe you'd survive the defamation, the spectacle that the public would bring down. But here you are, stronger than ever, standing at the spot they said you'd never reach. They transformed your struggle into a spectacle, cast you as the villain in a narrative that you did not create. They made sure the whole world saw their attempt to remove you. But they didn't realize that the audience is never faithful to the script, only for the show. And now the same eyes that once saw your demise are watching their own, because the truth does not vanish, and neither do those designed to resist the storm. This is not simply about survival. It's a victory. You didn't just make it through. You thrived. And it is a plot that no one can change. The illusion was expertly maintained, creating a spectacle that required the audience's involvement without them even recognizing it. They cheered. They jeered. They willingly participated in a performance intended to govern rather than delight. It was never really about one person. It was about domination, about keeping the system unchallenged. However, deceit tends to erode with time. At first, it was almost unnoticeable. Slight tone alterations replaced the once easy surety in their voices. The intensity in the air increased as uncertainty crept in. Those who had previously mocked with easy found themselves hesitating and contemplating. Some left the debate altogether, as if cutting links with the past would cleanse them of their guilt. Then came the change, subtle at first, yet difficult to overlook. The weight of their enjoyment shifted, and the laughing that had previously been their weapon of choice now turned against them. The audience, who had previously been blindly following the script, started to see inconsistencies, contradictions, and the dissolving edges of a beautifully crafted falsehood. The stage, which had been created to reduce someone to nothing, was now a site of revelation rather than judgment. None of it needed force. No magnificent vengeance. There is no overarching plan. The truth had been left alone, free to breathe, and by doing so, it exposed everything in due course. The rumors followed them instead. The inquiries, once reserved for the accused, had switched emphasis. Once considered impenetrable, their reputation, the very foundation they stood on, began to erode, seeping away quicker than they could control it. This was no little twist of destiny, no minor balancing of the balances. It was the restoration of order, one which did not go in their favor. Nothing about their emergence had been accidental. Every motion was precise. Each phrase was a planned attack intended to demolish, ensuring no other story could exist. Their success had never been based on merit. It had been all about elimination. They did not just desire triumph. They needed a scapegoat, a necessary sacrifice to strengthen their own position. The story was never spontaneous or organic. It was methodically crafted and spoken into existence in places where protests could not be heard and their voices controlled the echo. The deceit didn't spread overnight. It was planted, nourished under the pretense of casual concern, and skillfully packaged as plausible supposition. The untruth became the gospel, not because it was believed, but because challenging it took too much work. It was easy to accept and repeat, so it flourished. Laughter, contempt, and derision. There were never spontaneous responses. Rather, they were indications of control mechanisms employed to diminish what could not stand on its own. The manipulation worked for a while. Words had been polished into weapons, designed to hit without resistance, so that when people looked, they no longer recognized a person. Only a twisted picture, a caricature, a fabrication. However, no illusion lasts forever. For there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought to light. Luke 8:17. They believed they could conceal the truth, hiding it in murmurs and fabrications. But truth is like a seed. Press it down, cover it with soil, and you've created the foundation for something unstoppable. because they failed to comprehend that the truth is not fragile. It is a force. It does not wither in the dark. It takes root. When the moment is right, it surges forward, taking apart every falsehood, no matter how cleverly crafted. They weren't just telling a narrative. They were creating an illusion, layering lie on top of deception, sure that if they repeated it enough times, it would become unbreakable. It was never about reality. It was all about control, about guaranteeing that individuals did not see with their own eyes, but rather through the lens that had been supplied to them. And for a time, it worked. People nodded and accepted the story given to them because belief is simpler than examination. It takes effort to find the truth. However, passivity simply needs consent. So you march through it, bearing the weight of something you never built, burdened by claims that have never been proved. They didn't only interrogate you. They insisted that you question yourself. They wanted you to shrink under the strain, allowing their words to become your reality. But here's the deal about being picked. You are never intended to be shaped by popular opinion. You were never designed to be changed by manipulators. Because when you're set aside, you won't fold. You forge. They mistaken their influence for permanence and their numbers for strength. But neither mattered in the end, since a multitude cannot judge the truth. Truth determines itself. What they dreaded most was not your demise. It was your stamina. Because endurance reveals dishonesty in ways that words never can. The longer you stood, the weaker their story grew. The fissures started to appear. Not everything at once. Not with lights and fanfare, but in quiet moments of uncertainty, hesitation, and subtle changes in attitude as the weight of what they formerly believed became shaky. Now glance around. What was once uttered confidently is now murmured with reluctance. The previously arrogant stares are now filled with doubt and the weight they attempted to impose on you. It's falling off your shoulders and settling exactly where it belongs. Because falsehoods need regular upkeep. But this is the reality. The truth stands on its own. It doesn't beg, does not seek validation, does not shake when scrutinized. They believed they could talk things into existence. But you were never just a character in their tale. You proved that their story was a fiction. And now that the dust has settled, one thing remains unchanged. For a while, they stayed fast in their assurance, sure of their own righteousness, feeling they were uncovering something, disclosing a hidden reality. But control was never genuinely theirs. They weren't the architects, just the messengers. They were blindly following a stream, mistaking it for free choice. Meanwhile, you stayed in the midst of the pandemonium, seeing judgment being sold like a commodity, scattered, bartered, and swapped for approbation and the brief pleasure of group agreement. It was simple to trust the created world as long as no one questioned its fragility. But lies are fragile. They can only keep together if they evade examination, only if no one tries to delve too far. And then comes the unavoidable, gradual, creeping disintegration. The truth doesn't need to be rushed. It just needs to wait. And when it comes, it doesn't shatter the fantasy. It destroys it. You're here for a purpose. If you feel called, answer it. Click. Join to get access to rare information, in-depth insights, and a strong community. This is not just a membership. It is an awakening. Step into your divine mission. Join the chosen. Initially, they talked without hesitation. Their conviction served as a barrier, protecting them from the prospect of being duped. They repeated the story as if it were incontrovertible. They bear the weight of their conviction with pride, spreading it as if ownership of the tale made them superior to doubt would imply admitting their own error. However, time does not retain illusions. It erodes them. The fractures start off tiny and scarcely apparent. There is a conflict here. There is a difference there. A moment of pain when something did not fit as nicely as it previously did. And once sown, skepticism never leaves. It lingers, grows, and dismantles. Internal certainty, transforming calm suspicion into incontrovertible reality. The whispers were quiet at first. Why is the tale constantly changing? Was there ever proof? How did we accept it? Without a doubt, those who had before talked confidently began to hesitate one by one. They could no longer overlook the narrative's continuous boreholes. Conversations, previously accepted as reality, came to seem incomplete and shaky. However, there was no war, no counterattack, and no frantic struggle to restore the truth. It was allowed to develop spontaneously, to breathe. Silence, rather than resistance, ultimately undermined the lie. The lack of affirmation, the weight of doubt, and the awareness that they had been duped not by you, but by their own propensity to believe. For there is nothing covered that will not be exposed, and nothing concealed that will remain unknown. Luke 12 verse 2. They stood strong, certain that their version of the tale would prevail. They talked as if their words were engraved in stone, as if no one would try to question them. And for a while, it appeared like they were correct. The story spread. The crowd believed, and no one challenged the screenplay they were given. They confused their influence for permanence and their power for the truth. A falsehood, no matter how well crafted, can never survive the truth. Because the truth isn't delicate. It does not need defense, does not plead to be heard, and does not battle for survival. The truth awaits. And when the weight of truth becomes too hard to ignore, no delusion can withstand it. They believed they were in charge. They believed they were the ones setting the scene. Narrative direction, keeping the power. But power based on dishonesty is borrowed. It never actually belongs to the person holding it. They were just leasing their power, borrowing time from a system that will ultimately turn against them. And their time has gone out. They didn't just misinterpret the circumstances. They misjudged the essence of truth itself. They constructed their words around perception, changed reality via influence, and persuaded the world that what they claimed was more important than what was actual. For a time, people accepted it because it is simpler to obey than to question, to accept than to explore. However, dishonesty has a weak basis. It can't survive inspection. It cannot survive if people start looking too closely. And now the transition has started. The same voices that used to repeat their statements without hesitation now talk with doubt. The same individuals who stood behind them now take a step back, watching, waiting, and recognizing that something doesn't match up. Their assurance has transformed into trepidation, and their certainty into uncertainty. Because when you construct a home on shifting sand, the storm will eventually arrive. If your heart is overflowing with God's blessings, let that love radiate. Click the super thank you button and donate $20 or more to sow seeds of faith that will change countless lives. Your giving exemplifies His richness. Be a channel for His grace and watch His kingdom grow through you. So here it is. The reckoning. The unveiling. Everything they believed was permanent starts to slip from their grip. The burden of their own lie now falls on their shoulders. They can sense it. Every discussion seems different today. Each whisper has a query. They are well aware of this. So does everyone else. The truth did not need a spectacular introduction. It did not need a battle, or an army to protect it. It just came. And with its arrival, the illusion crumbled. Because this is what usually occurs. Truth does not need permission to exist. It just stands firm, unshaken, and unstoppable. They feel they are the arbiters of the tale, molding it to their will and wielding it as both a shield and a sword. Names were converted into spectacles. Reputations reduced to entertainment and illusion spread not through facts or logic, but by sheer momentum. It was never about the truth. It was all about control. And they relished it, ensuring that every discussion focused around their preferred story. Each sneer and smirk confirms their version of events. The audience did not hesitate to follow, not because they understood, but because they wanted to join, to be a part of something, to stand with people who seemed untouchable. But illusions are fragile. The pedestal they created, the same platform that was used to hurl others down, is now fracturing under them. The eyes that had previously been amused are now filled with uncertainty. The once applauding hands have ceased to move, and the question is no longer about their intended aim. It is about them. The conviction they once commanded is fading. replaced by whispers of half-formed doubts that seep into once ironclad exchanges. The tale, which was formerly accepted without doubt, is now received with examination and criticism, with no opposition necessary. There is no urgent quest for justice, no endeavor to alter history. Only the patient stayed, stuck in their own interpretation of events, while everything around them altered. And now they are the ones being measured, their words scrutinized, their every action studied. The whispers they once used to tighten their hold are now sliding from their grasp, turning against them, showing fissures they never imagined would appear. Because illusions are created with borrowed time, and the clock has run out. The stage they previously ruled now feels strange under their feet. The same voices who once championed their story now linger in doubt, observing with trepidation as the weight of their own decisions pounds down on them what they previously handled so casually. Words of influence and manipulation have turned against them. They felt they were responsible for someone else's ruin. However, every action they took simply paved the way for their own demise. There was never any reason to retaliate. There is no need to sink to their level, because equilibrium doesn't need force. It works quietly and unnoticed, unconcerned about pride or malice. This was not about settling scores or exacting revenge. It was a straightforward and unavoidable course adjustment. They confused control for permanence, believing they could influence perception without consequence. However, in their constant quest of dismantling someone else, they left themselves vulnerable. And now the gravity of their lie is clear. They did not just undercut another. They undermined truth itself, and truth, regardless of how long it had been hidden, always resurfaces, unyielding and absolute. The change is apparent. The momentum they previously depended on has shifted, sweeping them into the same tempest they once unleashed, an audience enthusiastically echoing their cries. Now he observes with uneasiness. Their formerly unshakable commitment is waning under the weight of discrepancies. The beautifully woven illusion they crafted is dissolving strand by strand, and what was once a smooth reality has become a tangled mass of inconsistencies. This isn't a coincidence, nor is it a chance. It represents the restoration of balance, with the natural order returning its position. Because when someone attempts to obliterate another's identity, they do not devalue the target. They expose the weaknesses in their own foundation. And the foundation is already eroding, not by force, but by inevitability. The disadvantage necessitates no disclosure. There is no need for conflict. There is no great unveiling. The truth has already spoken for itself in the quiet of those who formerly cheered them on, as shown by sideways looks that now convey doubt, rather than adoration. There is no simple way out of this. Losing credibility is not only a momentary setback, it is the ultimate judgment. They no longer have control over the image they meticulously built. No matter how much they attempt to recapture it, to mend the wounds, to rewrite history, they cannot alter what has been seen. And the individuals who once stood by them, who once followed without question, are now backing away, distancing themselves, and some even turning openly against them. The weight they sought to transfer onto someone else has found its due position firmly on their shoulders. They no longer have control over the whispers, turning against them, repeating their own mistakes. The tale they believed they were authoring was never yours to bear. Finally, they did not shatter you. They merely exposed themselves. Pretense can only be used as a shield for so long. The weight of exposure is irreversible, leaving no room for escape, no possibility for modification, and no means to undo what has already been seen. They expected resistance and a desperate appeal. Assume that defending yourself would consume you, but you did not play their game. You allowed them to create their illusions, mold their version of events, and build their house of cards while you remained unmoved. Because they failed to grasp the fundamental fact that truth does not seek acknowledgement. And now look where you are, unshaken, unconcerned, unbreakable, as they fall under the weight of their own deceit. There was never any cause for revenge. Choosing self-preservation above confrontation is a strength they will never achieve. They thrived on show, The fed on division mistaken turmoil for control. But your route was different. You've never sought validation, never struggled to be believed. You pushed on, allowing time to reveal the truth and let reality speak for itself. Those who look past surface-level distractions understand the difference. They discriminate between people who make up tales and those who just live them. They recognize that while others were focused on ripping down, you were focused on creating something genuine, and they are still attached to a story. They decline to inquire. They weren't supposed to see the truth to begin with. Some people cling on to deceit not because it convinces them, but because admitting their mistakes is too difficult. However, you are not responsible for carrying that weight. Power is not contained in the noise. It is in the stillness that they realize that no matter how hard they try to control perception, the end result is never within their grasp, and their efforts to hold on are dissolving. The confidence they previously exuded is now empty. The assurance in their words had given way to doubt. They thought that dishonesty had a solid basis, but as the building fell, they were left scrambling. Performance shifts. They suddenly feel sorry. Their sentences were deliberately softened, and their tone changed into something scripted. But genuine responsibility never necessitates a script. The apologies are deliberate and ambiguous, intended to convey just enough without ever really admitting blame. They don't regret their decisions. They regret the results. Then comes rebranding, a frantic attempt to reinvent oneself as misunderstood, to portray their acts as innocent errors rather than intentional damage. They were misled. They were unaware. They only reiterated what they thought. However, the transparency of it is obvious. It is not growth. It is damage control. While some will be misled into accepting the illusion, the truth will remain. When trust is shattered, it cannot be restored. Redemption isn't a performance. It is a process that demands more than idle words. And the one thing they are unable to provide is the single thing that can ever make a difference: true responsibility. The aftermath is apparent. Desperation pervades their acts, a desperate effort to repair what cannot be restored. They soften their tone and words, attempting to recast the past as a misunderstanding rather than an intentional betrayal. But the harm is done. They believe they can rewrite perceptions, and that if they shift the narrative today, others will follow. They proceeded as usual, without hesitation. What they failed to see was that the era of blind faith was gone. The illusion broke. No amount of performance can bring things back together. The folks who earlier defended them are now hesitant. Their devotion was tinged with suspicion. The assurance is gone. Every phrase they utter now has a new weight. Dissected, examined, no longer accepted at face value, since treachery is difficult to forget, and dishonesty lasts longer than any act of goodness. Look attentively. The change is clear. Conversations are now filled with quiet cynicism rather than adulation. Where there was formerly unflinching support, there are measured reactions, guarded looks, and an unsaid wariness that was never there before. It's not fury or indignation, but something more terrible: mistrust. People never forget the moment they discovered they had been misled. Even those who remain engage in cautious behavior, always mindful that what was once unquestionably true has proved flimsy. Their comments no longer hold the same weight as before. Instead of assurance, they are confronted with quiet hesitancy and a hitherto unheard of weight. They will try to mend, recapture lost territory, and restore the power they previously wielded so easily. However, the stain left by exposure is difficult to remove. Trust is not a repurchasable currency. Once shattered, it is no longer under their control. Their effect has diminished. They tried to rewrite history in order to preserve their version of events, having been reduced to echoes in a place where they formerly commanded attention. However, reality has altered. People who formerly followed without doubt are now hesitant to believe. Their steadfast support was weakened by the weight of facts. Every move they make is monitored. Every remark was welcomed with cautious quiet rather than outright acceptance. They felt they could shift the burden of uncertainty on someone else, forcing them to bear the weight of their falsehood. But now that weight clings to them. The stain they once attempted to inflict on someone else has become their own, a mark they can't erase from their reputation. Once an instrument of persuasion, it has become delicate, readily questioned, and permanently changed. They live somewhere between former splendor and current uncertainty, tolerated but never totally trusted. Their voice can still be heard, but it no longer dominates the room. The shift is unmixed competent. Their presence, once dominating, now seems unsure, and their words lack the weight they previously had. They behave as if nothing has changed, but the aura surrounding them tells a different narrative. The quiet surrounding their statements is louder than any charge. The people who formerly applauded them are now watching from a distance. I'm no longer certain or persuaded. They will try to rebuild what was lost, to form an identity that is not tainted by their own deeds. However, the foundation has cracked. People do not forget the instant they discovered they had been duped. Regardless of how much effort is put into rebuilding, the fissures remain obvious. They may gain new followers and persuade others that the past is no longer important. Those who witness the reality, however, will recall that they imagined power was permanent. This perception might be molded forever. However, deceit is a transient currency, and they have depleted their supply.